interested, and I think I fell asleep games or whatever, you know. That was before my,
Or you were just a kid then.
yeah, before my
Yeah,
interest
I
in church.
can buy a lot of the stuff. I know.
You know, we had a woman preacher that she
Ah, that's interesting.
Oh, well then you won't be shocked at Vicky's wedding, will you?
The only disadvantage was that whenever somebody would ask, what church did you go to? Or what religion are you? I never had sense enough to say Protestant. I'd say Presbyterian or something.
Oh.
Because most people wouldn't understand what I was talking about.
Right. Most
New
people
thought?
don't know.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's perfect for me. So the wedding ought to be, I think, very nice. There's candles and something, you know, lighting the candle together or something. I don't know. Going to find out this Wednesday what the wedding ceremony's like.
Well, is it a church? Actually, you have a church, or is it just a room?
Well, Mom's been there. It's
I would call it a church.
It's a church. It's in a shopping center, in a strip shopping center, but it's a great big room, and it holds about 500 people, and it has all these chairs, and it has a raised area in the front with lots of little flowers around it, and it has
carpeting, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all carpeted. It has a podium and 2 armchairs and a big grand piano, and then it has a regular organ, and on Sundays we have a bass guitarist and a drummer too.
The only thing is, it's not one building, which houses the whole church.
Right. And then where you come in, there's a fellowship hall where, you know, people just sort of, it's just a big open room where there's coffee and tea in the back, and there's tables for newcomers, you know, and charts on the walls telling what all's going on. And to the right is another big room, and that's where the bookstore is, and then the church offices are behind there. So it's all one big long strip. So, anyway, I love my church. Who is one of the kindest individuals you've met?
Oh, Vicki. Yeah, I think you're a very kind person. Let me think of somebody else who is very kind. I think your brother David is.
I think Stephen is.
And Stephen is very, very, yeah.
Of our present friends, I would say Peg.
I was thinking the same thing, John. She's a very kind, sensitive person.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I like Peg a lot. But I think Stephen is the epitome of kindness.
He is. He's very, very kind. Gives up of himself.
I keep remembering when we got stuck on the turnpike when we were going to Bennett's house on our way up to the lake in Michigan. We were riding in the old Country Squire car, and you were in the back seat, and David was out of the car with John. We were trying to find out what was wrong with it. And Dad had gone into the station. And anyhow, it was just you, Stephen, and I. Stephen was in the middle. You were in the back.
And he must have been just a little guy.
He was just a little guy. And he said, Vicki, do you want my teddy bear to make you feel better?
Oh.
Honestly, I'm sure he'd be embarrassed for me to be saying that, but that's Steve. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else?
I was going to say, of my kids, I think Jenny's the one.
Yeah.
Who would offer her teddy bear.
Oh.
Maybe it's a third child thing. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, Jenny would be.
Jenny is now, and you haven't seen her lately, but now that she has accepted Matt and accepted that I'm not leaving her, that you know, and that Matt's an addition rather than taking Mommy away. The other morning, I came downstairs, you know, to get her ready for school, and she was already dressed, and she greeted me, and this was, you know, after I'd been crying for a couple of days, and she knew how stressed out I was. The first thing she did was give me a big hug, and she said something about, Mom, I'm so sorry for all you're having to go through.
That's very mature, isn't it?
Oh, she is amazing. She is just amazing. And then later on, I was really angry at Andy. You know, I told you how angry I was. Or maybe Oh, and maybe this was the day before when I was so angry at the tribunal for judging Laura so harshly. And she said, she came over and I was crying on the couch and she sat down beside me and she took my hand and she said, Mom, I'm going to tell you something that you told me a year ago or, a long time ago. And she said, you told me this is the most important thing in life, or, well, maybe it was one of the most important things of life, and that is to forgive. That forgiveness is one of the most important things in life. And this is my 8-year-old telling me, quoting my words back to me, but that she would remember. She is an incredible child. And she's also the most, demonstrative, the most passionate. So you might not have even ever seen her kindness, but I know when I had my foot surgery, of the 3 kids, she was the one who came and waited on me and, wanted to take care of me. She's a very sweet person, a very special one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to say who you think is a
Peg
kind
Christiana.
person?
Sure, is it forget?
Yeah, Peg.
Oh, Peg, that's right, yeah.
That's just right at the top of it.
Yeah. You're kind.
Oh, no. No.
Sometimes.
Well, you really
I
put
think
me
you're
through
kind
college.
to me.
Huh?
You put me through college.
Well, that was kindness. I didn't have
Yeah.
a choice. Your mother said, you put her to college.
See, that's unkind.
You taught me to ride a bicycle. You ran behind me.
Yes, I did that. I've done that so many times, and you were no exception. I did it with Dave. I did it with you. I did it with Steve. I did it with David. I didn't do it with Jenny.
Now, Jen doesn't know how to ride a bike.
Does?
Not you.
And she doesn't ever want to learn. And we have a bike sitting there in the shed for her, and she just doesn't want to learn. And I know she has the best balance of any of the kids.
She
I know she
probably
could learn in a
will.
minute.
Yeah.
But she's 8 years old, and she really doesn't want to learn. It's so funny.
I don't think you did when you were 8
You
either.
didn't want to learn either.
Well, it was when I was 8 and a half. And then I wanted
You're
to.
the same. Yeah.
That was one time I didn't like you at all.
I know. I remember my 8th birthday.
Yeah. Roller
Beautiful
skates.
green bicycle.
It really
Hey, it
was
just
a
went
pretty.
off, I think.
No, it's all.
Well, I heard it
I
click.
think that was this right here. It clicked.
Oh, maybe so. Yeah, I guess
And
it
it's
was.
only been 40 minutes, or maybe an hour.
Oh,
'cause
was that a
remember-
2-hour tape or what?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well,
We
go
don't
on
have to
the-
do it all tonight, but
Let's hear
I think
another
we're doing
question.
fine. Do you have an incident about a key?
What?
Losing a key. The keys are all your stories, Vic. I know one though. I went to Sutton's Bay to get my hair done, and when I was sort of late for the appointment, and I rushed off, and it wasn't until I got back to get in my car that I realized that I had locked the keys inside the car.
Well, you didn't know
And-
they weren't inside the lock, though. They weren't
Oh.
inside the way they're supposed to be. You lost the keys.
Oh, I didn't.
Well, as
I
far as
locked the door and they
you
couldn't
didn't
get
see
in.
them. You didn't see them. You called me and you said you lost the keys.
Listen, this is my story. Let me tell it.
Yep, this is your story because I rescued you.
I was going to get to that, but I didn't lose the keys. They were in there. Maybe they had fallen. Maybe you're right. Maybe they fell on the seat. I couldn't see them. They weren't right in the thing. I don't know. But I went across the street to the gas station, and this was in the, I want to say Citation, but it was a Sable. And the Sable had these kind of windows, and there is no way that they could open that door. Normally with some of them they can do it, but they couldn't do it
With
with
the
that
Sable,
car.
they gave us a special discount on insurance because
Yeah.
of
So anyhow, then the girl over there told me to call the bus company because she said the buses ride through here ever so often. And so I did that, and then I called Dad, and Dad arranged to be up at the corner there on 643 for the bus to come along and pick him up, and he rode with the bus driver I think you're only ones on the bus just about all the way into Sutton's Bay, because he had his key, you see, and then he was able to come over
I
and
don't know
rescue
that I
me.
ever heard
Okay,
that
now,
story.
now I'll tell you my version of the story, which was slightly different. June called me. Maybe she had already called the bus, but June called me. I called the bus company myself, and I made arrangements for the man to get. He was out on his farm, but they caught him and the bus driver, and he got him to go out and get his bus and drive from
Cedar or Sutton's Bay?
no, the other one.
Maple City.
No.
Traverse City.
Lake Lilo.
Oh, okay, Lake
From
Lilo.
Lake Lilo up to pick me up, and then I had, but they had, but he had to call me to find out where to meet, and I had to describe where it was. So I went up and I met him, and then he drove me into Sutton's Bay. Then I unlocked the car door for your mother, and the keys were down between the seat and the door.
Oh.
They were not on the seat.
Okay, I relinquished that in my story. I said that.
You said
I said it was a possibility.
you locked them in the car. It's true.
Well, I
You
did.
You dropped them as you out of your hand, out of your purse as you were getting out of the car.
Yeah. Technicality.
Well, it's,
Well, I think the funniest one was when Jenny did it on purpose.
I know it.
that was not funny.
Well, it wasn't. And the further away it is, the funnier it gets.
No,
Did she admit it yet?
Oh yeah, she admitted it, you know,
Oh.
but she just didn't want me to go.
Was that it?
Oh,
God.
yeah. It was because Nancy and Karen were there, and I was going
Yeah.
to spend the night over at the other place,
Uh-huh.
and she didn't want me to go. Sweet little Jenny.
Yeah. Oh.
And then Dave did it, you know, just a couple
I heard
weeks
about
ago.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Did Dave
And
do it?
everybody blamed Jenny.
Right, I blamed Jenny, and she was, Mom, why do you keep blaming me? Why don't you believe me? Well, Jen, I'm sorry. It's historical.
I didn't hear about Dave doing it.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
it was
he did.
because Matt's kids were over, the two middle kids, and they were going to go spend the night with their other friend, Michelle, who lives over near us. And the last time they'd been over, Michelle came over and spent the night with us. So they had a big slumber party in the living room. Whoops. And he wanted her to come over here, you know, so that he could be included also, because if I had my keys, I was going to drive Dan and Laura over to Michelle's house, and he would have had no party.
Mhm.
And so he took my keys and hid them in his bedroom in his toolbox. It was so funny because after he finally admitted it, then he said, and you never would have found them either because I hid them in my toolbox. He even told his hiding place, you know. It was poor Dave.
Yeah.
He's so funny. But he did admit it finally. But yeah, we're not letting him forget it. We're
Yeah.
because it's a lie, you know, it's a lack of trust
Yeah,
type of thing. So
uh-huh.
now next time when something's lost, rather than blaming Jenny, we'll blame him. It's historical. Well, let's see, that's interesting. Tell about an incident with a car.
That could go on forever and ever and ever, couldn't it? I know what you're thinking, the time that we pushed the bus.
No.
Or you're thinking about the time that we went down, all the way down the slippery road. And,
No,
okay.
this is something a little more embarrassing than that. It's the time we were driving, we had the little, still had the little green Chevrolet.
Chevrolet?
I think so. And we were driving to Cincinnati at night, fully dark, and you said, I have to go to the toilet. I gotta go to the toilet bad. Well, in those days, there weren't gas stations every place, you know. So I drove on the highway, and I saw this little road that went up like that. So I pulled up on this little road, and June opened the door, and she squatted. Just then a car came by, and toot, 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 toot.
John, that's not true. You're making
I'm not making it up at all.
Oh,
I couldn't make up something like that.
Oh, sure you could. I don't remember that, but then
conveniently
it could have-
blocked that
It could have
memory.
happened, yeah, it could have.
Now, you want to hear a good one about a car. Okay.
Are you sure?
1933. 1933. My
Oh.
father and I left Cincinnati in the 1928 Oakland. It's a car. It was a big car. And we drove to Chicago and visited the World's Fair. And on the way going there, though, we went to Marion, Indiana. And on the way back, we went to Decatur, Illinois. And that's the reason we were able to go to Chicago, because the company paid his expenses to visit these two companies who were our suppliers, the Johnson Electric suppliers. Well, when we left Chicago to come back, I didn't drive. Dad never drove a car.
Oh, really?
Oh, he only once, but he would never drive. Grandma drove all the time.
Well, why didn't he drive?
He didn't want to.
Don't you think that's a little strange?
It is. He's a strange guy, I guess. Anyhow, I did the driving. I was 12. 1930.
He drove once, didn't he? And he almost had an accident, and your mother got mad at him, and he said never again.
I don't know if she got mad at him, but he didn't want to drive.
It sounds possible.
Anyhow, so we were leaving Chicago, and we go to drive all the way from Chicago to Cincinnati. That's 300 miles. And in those days, 300 miles was a long, long ways in one day. And this was on a Sunday, and the next day was to be the 4th of July, as I remember. Monday was the 4th of July. So, first off, we left Chicago, and that night they'd have a real downpour. And we were driving along, it's dark, driving along the street, and they had these elevated railroads. And the street would go down underneath it. And we went to one of these, and this at the last minute, I saw that it was full of water. I just barely stopped before I went into the water. Okay, that was number one. Well, we got out and went around somehow, and got out of there. We finally got out of Chicago. And we drove all the way down through Indiana, through Indianapolis, and got down near Brookville, Indiana, which was getting pretty close to Cincinnati by that time. And we got down there, and they had a brand new highway. Now, most of the highways were not very good those days, but this is a brand new concrete highway. And, it was really marvelous to be able to drive along and see the radiator cap up here just be real steady. Usually it bounces up and down like that. But here you just drive along, and this car.
Oh yeah, that gets sharp. Yeah.
Sorry.
This car, of course, is top speed was about 60 miles an hour, and we would drive along there, just really beating it out real good, and all of a sudden this thing went bang, and then and that car was shook like that. And I said, well, I thought I blew a tire. That was the first thought, but it steered all right. So I brought it to a stop. In those days, you didn't bring it to a stop very quickly. It did have four-wheel brakes, but they were not really good brakes. I stopped the car and pulled off over the highway. No traffic. You could drive for an hour and not see a car those days. And I went out and opened up the hood, and here was a little water out of the radiator. That was all right, but what caused the vibration? Looked in there, now the blade, the fan, was a four-bladed fan. You only had three blades on it. One of the blades, because it was going so fast, the vibration had broken the blade off. That's what went bang, it hit up under the hood. It made a dent up that never was able to get out of it on the hood. And the blade somewhere was back on the highway. And so, well, what are you going to do? Well, I said, Dad, there's a farmhouse down over the hill here. Go down and get some water. Get a pail of water. We got to fill it up. And of course, this is a brand new highway, so the berm was clay. I went over, it was damp, and I went over and got a handful of this dirt, which was yellow clay-like, and I put that on the radiator where it was leaking. It stopped the leak. And it stayed
be hot, so it cooked it right on.
It was so hot that it cooked it right away, dried it right away. And we filled the radiator. But now, when you start the engine and we started driving, we couldn't go over about 25 or 30 miles an hour because it's vibration. It's fan being out of balance. Well, we drove on into the next town, which I think was, as I remember, was Brookville or Rushville or something like that.
I would have broken off the other blade, so there were just two.
That's right, but we was pulled in a gas station and said, "Is there a Pontiac garage or Pontiac or Oakland garage?" Because Oakland was the same as Pontiac. And they said, "Yes, but he's closed." And so here's a problem: we got a blade that's broken off, and you think, would they have a blade, spare blade? He said, "I doubt they have it anyhow. They have to order out of Cincinnati." I said, "Well, we can't drive this way." Yes, here we go. So the guy got out a hacksaw blade and a hacksaw. We tried, we couldn't get it in there very well. Then he got a pair of these great big bolt cutters, you know. Got down, he nipped that, we kept working at it. Finally, we got the obsa blade off. So now we had a two-bladed.
Like you said.
And we started up and it ran fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we drove the rest of the way into Cincinnati with a two-bladed fan. And it did drive fast, but it was not that hot a day that it hurt anyhow. And then the next couple of days it took to get the radiator fixed. And the guy at the radiator place said, "Boy, whatever you put on there is sure the hardest thing in the world to get off." But it worked. Chewing gum would have been fine if we had chewing gum, but we didn't. It didn't. It wasn't a very big hole, but it was a squirt down.
Yeah.
So that's an old
neat.
story. I can tell you about 25 automobile stories with that car and all kind of experiences.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the end of the story.
What's yours?
Oh, that's good enough for both of us, I think. My favorite car was my father's Willie Sniper
Oh, no.
car.
It was not.
Your the car?
Le car.
Your little Le Car was your favorite car?
As a kid,
Oh,
I
Oh,
loved
yeah.
that Willie's Knight, that open touring car. I thought it was great
Willie's
stuff.
Knight. Now, you never heard of a Willie's Knight. You never heard of an Oakland either.
Well,
But there were several cars that were called Knight.
With a K or an
Yeah.
N?
K-N-I-G-H-T,
Oh, okay.
which is the band's name.
Oh, okay.
But there was a Stearns
Yeah.
Knight, and a Willie's Knight, maybe another one. But the reason for it being Knight was the fact that the kind of valves it had in it. You had what they call sleeve valves. Instead of having popping valves, you know, like the valves on a car are, these were sleeves that moved up and down on the outside of the cylinder. Something like that.
hey, I'll tell you, it was a toss-up between favorite cars. On my part, whether it would be a Le Car or whether it was a Country Squire. I loved that old Country Squire that we
That
had.
was a nice one too, yeah.
I really did. That was the one that carried you kids all over the place.
Yeah. Your first car to drive.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It had a clutch, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Uh-huh.
I mean, you
But it
didn't get
was-
an automatic
No.
for a long time.
No,
I remember
uh-uh.
you even, the Ford Fairlane station wagon, when we moved to Charleston in '62, that was when you gave up your company car, remember, and you had to buy
Yeah.
a car? It had a clutch. I remember Luckadoo. Remember
Oh,
Luckadoo Road?
Luckadoo with a clutch was something else,
Boy,
wasn't it?
Now that was a challenge for learning
Double-
to drive.
Oh, you know it.
Having to use the emergency brake and
At the same time, yep,
Yeah.
that's right.
In fact, there was one case where the company wanted to give me a 4-cylinder car with an automatic transmission. And in West Virginia, 4-cylinder cars were not worth anything. There were too many hills or mountains. So I convinced them that, how about making a swap? How about giving me a 6-cylinder with standard transmission? The standard transmission was a lot cheaper than automatic in those days, anyhow. And they went along with it. And for me, that didn't mean anything. When I'm driving 50 miles, how often am I going to shift?
right.
Once to start and once to stop.
Yeah.
And didn't you think there was something about slippery roads, you were better off if you had control of the
Oh yeah,
The
you could
gears.
downshift easier.
better than, yeah. And of course, that was something we had a lot of. in
Well, of
West
course, I
Virginia.
always got positive traction too,
Yeah.
but when I could.
I remember driving all the way across Cincinnati in my 1965 Mustang, my silver Mustang, without any brakes. Because Gary had replaced the brakes and had messed up the job so that all the brake fluid was pouring out.
Oh, Vic, I'm glad I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
It was when I was student teaching in Indian Hills.
Uh-huh.
And I was living over in Clifton, and I had to drive all the way across town just by downshifting, you know.
Oh,
What was that highway that went around, followed the
Columbia
river?
Parkway?
Yeah, Columbia Parkway with no brakes. You
oh,
know that hill you go down to get onto Columbia Parkway?
Down to Delta Avenue?
Yeah, down, and
what'd you
yeah.
do, put it
Traffic lights
low
up
or
on it.
something?
I drove very slowly, and
Low.
it had a very low.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
And
that would be
I
something.
was very lucky with the lights.
I was gonna
I timed it, you know. I saw it. Okay, now I have to wait for it to turn green. Okay, I made that one.
If you could do that, you could drive anywhere. Yeah.
It was a challenge. Wow. Tell about a friend or an acquaintance with a different national background.
You mean like Andy?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking more like Heather.
Well,
Yeah.
Heather was a great person.
Yeah, she was, she had polio. Did you know that? And she was a cripple. But she was, very intelligent, lots of fun,
Yeah.
and very pretty.
Or maybe Kirsty.
Kirsty would be a great one, wouldn't she? Yeah.
Well, Heather
Kirsty is a doll.
was outstanding in the fact that when we were going to spend Christmas over there, we got over there in October, and we didn't know anybody. We got to know people. We went to dance. We were invited to go to the company dance, and we went to their picnic, and we were getting to know people a little bit. But we were still shy. They were accepting us, but then Heather came. I had these other things I didn't go with Heather, but she came over to my office there, and we talked a couple times. She was being very friendly, and it was not strictly friendly. And so when Christmas came up, she invited June and me to come over. Was it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Christmas Day.
For their dinner, yeah.
Yeah. And she apologized. She said, "We're not going to have a regular dinner. It's going to be a buffet." But I refused to cook because it's too hot to cook.
Oh, that's right. Christmas in the summer.
Yeah. And so we went over there. We took a bottle of wine with us. Is the only thing we did. We went over there, and there was Heather and her sister,
Yeah,
and her brother-in-law, and some other relatives. I can't remember who
Niece
all.
and nephew.
Niece and nephews, you know.
Yeah, and whatever his name. What was the guy that
Johnson.
Heather was dating?
Oh,
we went to his-
Graham.
Graham, that's right. Yeah.
Can't remember,
Yeah.
but
They were all there,
they were all there.
and there was all kinds of food.
And we had dinner with them, and they had presents. And well, we went to the door, and Heather came up and gave us a kiss on the cheek, and her sister, we'd never seen her before, she kissed me on the cheek.
Norma. Norma. Is her name?
Norma or Norla?
Norma.
Norma. Yeah. And her husband, of course, he's dead now. Anyhow,
Yeah.
just to envelop us into
Into her whole
a
family.
whole family like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was the greatest thing. I think one of the nicest things ever happened to me, anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow or other, we had a tape player with us, and we decided to tape part of the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And as the evening wore on, and people drank a little bit more and more, and everybody was very jubilant, and so we ended up singing "Waltzing Matilda," and we have it on tape, and it is.
I can play the tape.
It's
for
a
you
riot.
sometime.
It's fun. Yeah. Okay.
Of course,
Yeah. Heather was a nice girl.
there was conversations, about 3 or 4 conversations going on all the time. And so the tape player was down here, and you hear one conversation and another right on the top of it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they start singing Waltz of Matilda, and then would you start singing My Country, 'Tis of Thee, or something like that.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But we had had been with Heather many times before we went to her house for Christmas.
Yeah,
Because we had them over at our house for Thanksgiving.
Did we?
Uh-huh.
didn't-
I remember that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I remember fixing a great big platter of pineapple and strawberries. You know, fresh on this platter, and you just pick them.
Well, dip on
No,
powdered sugar.
no dip. Just maybe
Yeah,
there was
powdered sugar.
confection or sugar or something
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, in that crummy first apartment where we had over there. Okay, your turn.
No, you're going to talk about Kirsty.
Oh, Kirsty, yeah. Kirsty, of course, is Kirsty grows on you, and she's grown on me a lot.
You had a long ways to go, too. So from the beginning.
Yeah. I think Kirsty is, she's very Finnish, I think, in her attitudes, but at the same time, I guess she's rather cosmopolitan because she's thinking, I mean, some of David certainly is rubbing off, and also the girls, and also Finland is getting to be more that way too. But I admire Kirsty for her sense of humor. I admire her for how she has been with David, and I think she's been very good for
Her
him.
abilities as far as
Uh,
working the translations
Yeah,
and things like that.
I said
And
I
helping
think she's
David
very
on his
intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
and I like Kirsty a lot.
You didn't always, though.
Well, no, that's true. I don't think I
When
understood.
we went over there the first time, you sure didn't like her.
It was all big misunderstanding.
Oh, sure, I say, big misunderstanding, but neither one of you liked each other at that time.
Possible.
What is something you would like to pass on to the next generation?
We did that.
Life. Yeah.
You guys are so funny. You're both sitting here and you both tilted your heads exactly the same. You're both identical. Yes, life. And this gesture.
You should see us in fast motion.
You do dance together, huh?
Yeah, it's funny.
Cross your arms,
Yeah.
Susan, which way you go?
I don't know, I
You
changed
do it the
it.
same as I do, and nobody else in the world does it
Yeah.
that way.
Well, if I'm with
Okay,
somebody,
see, you got
Yeah,
your,
I have leftover.
I usually do it the other way around because I don't want people to see my fingernails. So I put, this hand's okay, see?
well, this feels comfortable. I was watching other people, nobody else does it this way.
This feels real uncomfortable for me to have my right arm on top.
Oh,
I always have my left arm on top.
like he's doing.
No,
No, he has his right arm on top.
I don't so.
Oh, when you say on top, I thought you meant hand.
No,
Okay.
the-
Yeah.
My hands together.
This is like playing shuffleboard. Go behind him. But you either go left or right. You don't go behind. That was funny.
I'm glad you think so.
Let's see. A favorite childhood story.
My turn or yours?
Yours.
Oh, well, let's see.
What kind of childhood story?
One time,
What happened to us or something like that?
Yeah.
I am 3 years old. My brother is 5. We're living in Madisonville, and out in front of our house is a great big wide street with streetcar tracks going down the center. And the road is not a paved road. It's a dirt road, which means that every so often they come by and put tar on it. We have friends across the street. We want to go play with the kids across the street. And so we start out, and my brother says, we'll piggyback. And so I got on my brother's back and start walking across the street. And we get pretty much in the middle of the street, and he falls down. So here we are like tar babies, you know, covered with tar all over this stuff they put on our roads. Well, needless to say, we went back home right away, And now, maybe we were a bit older because I don't remember my mother in this picture. My father, he put us in a bathtub and he put kerosene in there or something to get all the, what would it be?
Kerosene, probably.
Kerosene or coal oil, something.
Well, I was going to say coal
To
oil
get
kerosene.
the
The
tar
tar.
off. I've never forgotten that. Another time, my father and mother were at church.
I was just thinking about putting that down the drain. Probably wasn't so good for the
No,
water system
probably
either.
not. Oh,
It probably didn't put it
Yeah.
in the tub. Put them in the tub and
Yeah.
took a cloth and rubbed it with it.
one time when my mother and father, this I know they were
They
alive
couldn't sit
because
down
they
and
went to church.
it would just burn the tail out of it.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Woo!
We had
Private
clothes
parts.
on.
I know,
Oh,
but
in the
you-
bathtub you're talking
You
about.
didn't sit down, if you took your clothes
I
off,
remember.
they wash you off with kerosene maybe, but they didn't sit you down in liquid kerosene.
Okay, maybe you're right. I know I was in a bathtub though afterwards then.
Well, then you took a bath after
Yeah,
that.
I don't know.
Okay.
And the other story is about my brother. When I suspect, we were about 3 again, and Mother and Dad were gone. And while they were gone, we played circus. And so my brother wanted to make me and my friend Betsy Bacon as clowns. And to make us into clowns, he had to cut our hair. And so he, I had long curls, and he cut my curls off. And then Betsy had straight hair, and he cut her hair off. And when our parents got home, it wasn't so bad for my hair, like Jenny.
Right.
It wouldn't matter if it's
Right.
the hair just goes. But there wasn't a darn thing they could do with Betsy's. They had to take her to the barber shop and get it cut like a boy's. And I don't think they liked that too much.
Her parents probably not at all.
And I can't remember any punishments. I can't. But we had been to a circus, and Bud wanted to do that. I know lots of stories about my brother, but that's enough. Go on, tell some more.
Well, it's Dad's turn for
Oh,
childhood experience,
okay.
childhood story.
Well, I don't know. Well, I remember one time, you probably heard the story before, Jim. I was playing around with a couple of other kids in the neighborhood with a BB rifle. And a single shot. So you actually took it out and you put a single BB in it and you pump it. And so I was up on the limb of a tree, which is about sitting up there straddling this limb of a tree. How I get up there, I don't know. But I was about 7 feet up in the air, something like that. Sit there straddling the limb like that. And the guy said, "I'm going to shoot you." So he took him, he put the rifle up against the bottom of my foot. And he went, pop! Shot me. Of course, that didn't hurt. I felt a little sting, but it didn't hurt. Through the sole of my shoe, And he says, "It didn't hurt you, did it?" "No." He said, "I'll do it again." He said, "Pumped it." I said, "Don't do that. There's no rifle. I just shot the one BB out. They put it up against my pocket."
Oh, no.
Well, what he'd done, the BB went in against my foot, but it rolled back down into the gun. And he shot me, beat right.
Oh.
It hurt. But it didn't
Did
go
it go
through.
in? Go through the cloth?
No, it didn't go through the crossbar. It really stung, though.
Oh, boy, I bet you got mad. How come you didn't lose your balance and fall out of the tree?
I don't know. I don't remember whether they did or not.
Hmm.
Another thing, if you're talking about bottoms, this was when I was going to Kilgore School. Kilgore School's up
Elementary?
elementary. Yeah, that's when after I moved to Hyde Park. And I was there for the 5th and 6th grades. 2/5, so 1.5 fifths. And I don't remember the exact occasion, but they had a playground out in the back with swings and teeter-totters. You know what teeter-totters are? The teeter-totters were big, wide planks, about so wide, too. They stick, the thing on your ankle. And after school, for some reason or other, I was out there teeter-tottering with somebody else. And I ended up on the teeter-totter in the middle, which is about that far
Oh,
off the
you
ground.
can get, yeah, I know what's coming.
No, you don't. And so the easiest way to get off is just slide down. Well, I slid down there, but now this was an old pine board, and it weathered, and the splitters just sticking up like that. And I drove a splitter into my tail end, and it was that long,
Ow.
about that wide, about that
Ow.
thick, with a
Ow.
long point. And I felt, that hurt too.
I
Yeah.
believe it.
Oh,
Wow.
What am I going to do? Well, I ran into the school. Fortunately, the school was still open. I went into the boys' room, took my pants down, and
Ouch.
most of it broke off when I took my pants off, but there was still a hunk of splitter sticking in my tail end.
Wow.
I reached back there, pulled it out.
Ouch.
The end of the story.
I never heard that story before.
Now, speaking of the same thing, same place. I used to ride a bicycle to school, and it was on Herschel Avenue, was the name of the street, and it was a brick road. Brick, didn't have pavement, other bricks. And why I'd ever ride a bicycle to school, because it's mostly all up a long hill. I had to almost push it up the hill, but I was riding down, and going from Observatory Road down to the school, which is about the equivalent of 3 or 4 blocks. It was all downhill slightly. Well, when they built new houses there, of course, the water pipes and the gas pipes were under the street. They would dig a ditch, take the bricks up, dig a ditch, then put the dirt back, and put the bricks back on top of it. Well, that was fine for a few days, but then this dirt compacted, and then the bricks were dropped down, so they had a spot about 2 feet wide that had the bricks down maybe 2 or 3 inches. Well, I knew that was there. Usually I would ride down there, and I wasn't pumping, I'd just ride down a grade. I'd swing out around it like that. This particular time, there was a car coming up against me, so I wasn't bothered. I knew how to ride a bike. I came along, and just as I got to it, I picked up the wheel, and I got the front wheel over, it's all right. Well, I picked it up just an instant too quick. And I came down,
Just
and,
as it.
and it went, I went off the top like that. And I hit my head. I still got a bump on my head here. And it knocked me out. It's a wonder it didn't really hurt me seriously. And I sat on the curb a while. I got myself back. It didn't knock me out, it just dazed me, but I sat on the curb there for a while. I got back on my bike and rode the rest of the way to school, but I was kind of sick at my stomach. And I remember I was sitting on the outside, the entrance to the kids went in, the front entrance. We always went in the 2 sides. It was a 1-story school, and we went in the two ends. I was sitting on this concrete steps going up the doorway going in, and a teacher came by, and this was after the call to come in, and I didn't go in. She said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, I fell off my bike, bumped my hip." And she said, "You all right?" I said, "I don't feel very good." "Well, why don't you just go on home?" So I got on my bike and rode home. Got home, told my mother, and she said, "What, you bumped your head?" So she called the doctor, and the doctor came, and of course we didn't have a car. At least I don't think so. The doctor came and looked at me and said, "Well, he doesn't seem to have a concussion, but they make you stay in bed the rest of the day." Sounds like. But I still, on this side, I got a bump in my skull.
Yeah.
I probably partially fractured my skull at the time, because I hit myself hard.
Yeah. Bricks are hard.
Bricks are very hard.
Yeah.
That was another story.
Yeah.
Let's see. Describe one of the best decisions you made in your life.
Best decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're so obvious.
What are you going to say when you got married?
I decided to marry you.
Oh, bless you.
Most women
that's
would
so
never
sweet.
put up with me.
I wasn't going to be that kind. I was going to say when I decided to go to college.
Well, that's probably true.
Well, it was.
You didn't have any choice about getting married. I just decided to marry you.
Oh, I don't know. I could have said no. Yeah, I'm not sorry, John.
That's enough of that. Got another one.
A day when you went fishing or swimming.
Oh boy, now you want long stories or do you just want the sentences? I'll tell you, I learned to swim in Asheville, North Carolina, in a big a pool at Teal's house
Teal
when I
lived
was
in
9 years
Asheville?
old. Huh?
She lived in Asheville, North
Yeah,
Carolina?
she did. Yeah, Uncle
Why?
Frank was I think he was superintendent of music in the schools there.
At least you talked.
He was
to
in,
me,
he was in music anyhow.
Huh.
And they had a beautiful home in the suburbs.
Uh-huh.
And when I went to visit them when I was 9 years old, along with my grandfather, Biddle. We rode the train. Somehow my parents came later, but we went down on the train. And I remember they took us out to this big municipal park or country club or something, but there was a huge pool. And that's where I learned to swim, hanging on to the side of the pool and then going out and then coming back. But I was about 9 years old.
That's pretty old.
Yeah, I know it. I don't think I learned before that time. I remember one time, Dad taking me to some place. He climbed up on the diving board. He had me on his shoulders, and then he was going to dive in with me on his shoulders. And I know I was terrified. I didn't really like that too well.
He wouldn't have
I think he
done.
did.
He probably jumped.
Well, I don't
You
know.
know, dive with somebody on your shoulders. They go first.
I think that's what happened. I don't know.
Wow.
But then I remember in Chester Park when they had a roller coaster when I was just a little kid and getting on this roller coaster with my father and being terrified and screaming and trying to climb down at the bottom. And that was a terrifying experience. And then, of course, I grew to love them after that, but in the beginning it was scary. But swimming, yeah, it started there in Asheville. I'm pretty sure.
You know, that's where I want to live.
I know it.
That's
I don't
strange.
blame you. The rhododendron is beautiful.
Yeah. So
Well,
tell me-
I haven't been to Asheville for years.
I've never been there.
Oh.
Really. I mean, well,
Didn't
I
you
sort
go
of-
see? You were at
Hendersonville.
Hendersonville.
Yeah, and we drove
Yeah.
near Asheville.
Uh huh.
But yeah, I really like the mountains and
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful with the mountains. We climbed Mount Pisgah
all.
and camped there. It was lovely.
So do you have a fishing story
Just
Well,
one.
or a
John.
swimming story?
Well, no swimming stories. I never could swim. Fishing story. Okay. When I was a boy, the Ohio River was considered a good enough place to swim, but I didn't swim very much there. But the friends of my father's and mother's, the Von Hagels, had a camp on the Ohio River near New Richmond, just below the Richmond Dam at those days. And it was a crummy camp, terrible. It was a weekend place. And they had a boat. And I remember being out there one time fishing in a boat, and another boat was there. We went over close to it. I don't know if it was with somebody or not, but probably not. But the man had caught a fish, and a great big fish, about so big, big like that. And I remember seeing it and wondering what kind of fish it was. It was called a buffalo fish. It was a non-edible fish. But I don't think it was a sucker type of fish.
Looked like a
But
dogfish.
that's only part of the story. I think it was the same time that I went over to the dam and climbed up onto the locks and was sitting there on the locks. And it was the first time I ever saw a eclipse of the sun.
Huh.
Ah.
And it was there, and I had sense enough not to look at it.
You looked at the reflection in the water?
No, I did it by taking my hand and make a shadow and a little spot, and you could see it like a good old camera.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I did, or a piece of paper or something like that. That's the way I saw it, anyhow.
What
And
year was that, John? Because I can remember.
that would be about, let me see, that would be, I guess I was maybe 18 years old at the time, which
That would have
be
made me about 12.
1931.
It's about right. That was the year that my father, we all went out in the backyard and looked at it. We were living on Bramble Avenue in Cincinnati. Yeah.
Okay, the same time, I never went fishing there, but I did a lot of rowing around. I did go fishing one day, but didn't catch anything. Fish off the dam one time, but didn't catch anything. But I did go up one of the little streams, and the stream was just wide enough that the oars would just barely fit into it. I was going along there, and I caught a fish. I disturbed the fish, and he jumped boop, in the boat.
You're
Oh.
kidding.
Oh, how funny.
Is that true? That's a good fish story.
That is. That's a
Yeah.
really neat fish story. What'd
I've
you do
never
with
heard
him?
of it before.
Throw him back in?
I don't remember what I did with him.
Probably you took him back and said, guess what? He jumped in my boat.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. That is such a thing.
One of the funny stories was fishing was not me. This when Dave and I were up on Green Lake alone after, well, when Grandma and Grandfather, Sinclair, were up there. June was at home with you
No,
and
we were in
Steve.
Charleston at Grandpa Fiddles.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Anyhow, Grandma and Grandpa had to leave early because Grandpa Sinclair was not feeling well. So they left, and so we had another week left over.
Hmm.
And during that week, Dave and I, we had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
We went fishing, and we were fishing across Green Lake over near the point over there. And Dave was fishing, and he got a bite, and he went, "Hey, I got a bite!" Like that. Well, this fish never even had a chance. It was a great big fish, not big, a great one.
Mm-hmm.
It was a dogfish,
Mm.
but he was so proud of that dogfish. He took it home, and of course, after you leave him out of the water while the slime starts running off. But, yeah, I remember we took a picture of it. I don't know whatever happened.
Oh.
That same summer was when Dave and I drove up to Sault Ste. Marie and saw the locks for the first time. No, we do have some pictures of that.
Yeah.
And,
And we were in Charleston, and Grandma asked us to leave early.
How nice.
She was having her circle meeting or something there the next day, and so she had my father ask us to, if we couldn't go back home sooner.
How did we get there?
bus
Was it bus?
from Charleston.
Well, the thing I remember, no, it was a plane.
Fairmont to South
We were on a
Charleston.
plane.
Oh no, you didn't fly that time, did you?
Yeah, because Gene
Satterfield?
Satterfield met us at
Oh.
the airport.
You took a bus to Charleston one time.
Yeah, but that was when we were looking for a house,
Oh, I
you know.
see, yeah.
But when we had Stephen was just a little baby. He was sitting on my lap,
In the plane.
and they came around and wanted to fasten seatbelts. And I was on top of the seatbelts, and I couldn't imagine. I was trying to be so nonchalant about it all, and I didn't know how to fasten a seatbelt.
That was my first plane ride.
Yeah, it was.
I remember it.
Old
But then
DC-3.
Gene Satterfield came to the airport and met us and took us home. But we had to call to make sure he'd be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I threw up, didn't I?
You got sick.
I got sick
You
on
did.
the way one way, and on the way
Uh-huh.
back I loved it.
I thought it was your ears. No, you got sick. That's right.
Yeah, because I still remember it was like Stephen smelled so bad, like he had a dirty diaper or something.
Possibly, because he
and
was just
that-
a baby.
Yeah, and he smelled really, really bad, and there was not enough air, and I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And I remember throwing up. It was yucky.
I remember
really
that
sick.
too, yeah.
But and then on the way back, I loved it, and that was when I wanted to be a flight attendant. You know,
Oh,
that
yeah.
planted the dream. Oh, someday maybe I could be a flight attendant.
Oh,
Stewardess
yeah, I
in those
remember
days,
that.
you know.
Yeah.
I was going to tell a swimming story of when
Oh, yeah.
Laura almost drowned when I was pregnant with Dave, and I remember I was doing aqua aerobics in the summer, and I had hired the lady who was doing the aqua aerobics had a pool in her backyard. I don't even remember who it was, but I would take Laura, who was just 3 years old, and after doing her drown proofing, she hated the water and would not go near it.
I know, I remember. She didn't like it a bit.
Yeah,
She did.
she hated it. And so then the lady's teenage daughter, I paid to babysit for Laura, and the teenage daughter decided to be jumping on the trampoline and wasn't watching Laura very well, and Laura came over and jumped in the water, or fell in the water or something at the shallow end, and I was way up here in the deep end. And I remember just, churning through the water as fast as I could to get there, and held her up, got her out of the water.
Oh, gee.
It was scary.
Well, the
Yeah.
other story about swimming, of course, was when you almost drowned.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
Yeah.
thing when that lady
Like,
came and held you by your feet. Let that, oh. That could be bad. Oh, gee.
well, it's after 11 o'clock, and I think.
Why don't we watch it and see what we look like for just a little bit of it? You may decide to skip the whole thing, erase
Okay.
it.
Well, and then
That's
we
a
can-
very interesting way of doing it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And we can
Uh-huh.
do some more